Hello and welcome back to my Lidl Glider conversion to RC. Following the steps from the video on YouTube, I've taken off the canopy. It was knowing what's underneath. It's quite easy. If you don't know it, then you probably damage it. There were, I think, 4 dollops of glue. I think there was one here, one on each side here, and one here, which I've removed. I've also marked it up as the baron has done. I'll be then cutting it in with a cutter or with a knife, and then pulling out, feeling a bit like a dentist pulling out teeth. I'll be pulling this out. I've left like 1 centimeter on each side because I still want it to be relatively rigid. I have to be careful because of course the fuselage, as you can see, does curve in, so I don't want to actually get too thin, to get the wall to be too narrow. So that's going to be the next, probably a bit of a messy step that I want to do. Inside the canopy, and I might need to make also the canopy a little bit hollow it out a little bit. There was this huge nut, which I think is 35 grams. The rest of the fuselage I think was 40 or something grams, so significant weight is here, so you get that for free. Of course not for free because you bought it with it, but it's a good system that they don't need to make anything new. But then also the challenge, if I put this like this so you can see it, is that I need to squeeze in there, I need to squeeze in all the electronics. Now I did get a set of electronics for this, copying again what the Baron was saying, so I've got to be able to squeeze in there an ESC. This is a 40 amp ESC, I think it's way too big for what I need, but it came in the set. Then there's a huge motor that will go on the nose, so I don't need to fit it in there. I will also need to fit in a battery. I've got a relatively small battery. I've got another one which is bigger, but I would then probably go with a smaller battery. So all this has to go in here. Battery, ESC, which is very big, and the receiver, which I don't have it here because I put it into the Hurricane. It's somewhere else, but it's still quite a lot of hardware that has to squeeze in there without damaging it. So I'll probably find myself, I'm just guessing, I'll hollow this out. I don't know if you can see it, probably down vertically at first, but then I might need to hollow it out a little bit this way inside, so that there's space in there for those big 3 components. Then I'll have to make the decision about the servos. I've got a bag of servos somewhere. I'll probably go with the big ones, not with the small ones, and then I have to figure out how those go. So next step is now going to be to cut things, to cut the foam out, pull it out, and start to hollow it out and see how I fit in all the hardware. So follow along on this one, on this different type of build. And an update on the Lidl Glider conversion to RC. So as you see, hope you see, I've dug out here as much as I could to make space for the electronics. I've also gone in there as deep as I could, as I dared, without breaking into the wing area. And as low as I dare, again without damaging the bottom. I saw that the Red Baron, he also put in some kind of lollipop sticks. I've got some coffee stirrers that I'm putting in here. I've put in one side, I'll be putting in the other side also to give it a bit more strength, because there's going to be a lot of weight here and it could take some nose hits. So that's the fuselage. I've put in there the tail, the elevator, or the stabilizer, just to see how it's going to go. I'll leave it there for the moment. I've also found an old landing gear from another model, and I'm thinking of putting a landing gear on it. I know that that in the other little gliders there's no landing gear, but I'm hoping that this would somehow, on the one hand, maybe allow me to do a ground takeoff, which I think are always kind of very realistic, and it might even protect the propeller. So I'm not sure where to put it yet. I might leave it actually for the end, once I know where the electronics will be and things like that. So I'll leave this aside. I've also taken out the wing, and with that it's complete. What I do notice is that the Baron and others, they actually straighten out the wing. If you see, it's got here like the dihedral on the wing tips, and I was wondering why go about so much, why put in so much effort, and I'm not keen on doing it because I'm not so good with this material. I'm not used to it. It's I do prefer balsa. I don't know if it's easy or not, but I'm not used to it, and I don't want to damage it. But then when I was designing the elevators, I realized probably why they do it, right? They flatten it and then they can make one big elevator, sorry, not elevator, aileron that goes across. So I'm not doing that. I was thinking of putting ailerons on the wingtip. These would be more effective. But then where do I put the servo? Right, so I decided, and it might not be a wise decision, but at least I'll do it like that, to put the ailerons on the inner side of the wing, that they don't have this bend, and I'm going to append them to the wing. So I'm not going to bite into the wing itself, I'm going to append them, and hopefully like this I'm not damaging the airflow or not damaging the lift that the wing will generate, and it should have, I hope, enough control at least to go to steer the plane. So I took out its 6mm, which is 1/4 inch thick wood, and basically I cut out an angle here so it allows to bend. The hinge will probably be some tape or maybe even the stickers that come with the model, and so I beveled this a little bit to allow the movement, and just a little bit of rounding at the end. I don't know if you can see it there, just to give it a bit of shape. So that's the progress so far. Now the next step will be to continue to strengthen the cockpit. I need to go to the shop. I need to buy probably a Y cable to split to the for the servos. I might have one, but I want to use it for the Hurricane, so I might get one more, and I might even get a carbon rod to strengthen the fuselage, again tip from the baron, and also the wing. And again, the carbon rod I've never used before, so I would maybe put in here like a carbon rod and see how that would go. A lot of experiments with materials that are very new to me. So that's the progress, and those are the plans. I'll keep you posted. And some chaotic progress all around. Mainly what I've been doing is some mistakes. So I've been working on the wing. This is the underside of the wing. This is the leading edge, and I couldn't find the video from the Baron, from Nick, and then afterwards I did find it actually. So I started to dig out the hole for the servos here. Then I gave up for the night. Then I did find the video, and I realized that he was putting the servos ahead of the carbon strut, and that makes sense also because then the wires, they'll actually come up here in the front. So I changed my mind. I left that hole there, and in here the servo actually didn't fit in so well because it would be sticking out, because it is of course narrower here, or thinner. The wing is thinner. So then what I've been doing, I've been butchering then the front part. I've repositioned the place where I'm going to put the carbon bar, the carbon rod. It's a tube, and I've been digging a spot for the servos. They're both going quite flush, which, thinking of it, is needed, because if I want to put the wing on through the fuselage, through this hole, it has to be really very flush. So it's good that it's flush aerodynamically and also for the building. The next headache is going to be to cut a grooving here, through here, for the cable to come in probably up through here, and that will go then into the battery compartment. So that's going to be then the next step, probably up through, but then maybe I don't want to damage this, because this is what holds the wing in place actually. I don't know if you can see it, there's a little bit, I don't know if you can see it there, you might see it, and that actually holds the wing in place. So I have to see how I do it, that I don't damage it too much, or maybe down into the middle. I could put it in the middle and then have one combined groove for both ailerons. I have to figure it out. Then the cable will have to come out here through the middle, and then I need to dig in a hole, which I haven't done yet. It's a lot about making holes here. Somewhere in there, I don't know if you can't see it because it's too dark. In there I need to put in a hole so that the cables can come through. So that's also something I have to figure out. The material is indeed different and strange to me. I don't know how this goes, because I'm using the pliers and I'm pulling out a kind of plastic bubble by plastic bubble, chewing it out. I have to say I do prefer bolts at this point, but it's very resistant, which is also good. Like it's with bolts, there's not only the fear, but actually the fact of breaking things when you squeeze them too much by mistake. This actually takes quite a hit, and it's really, there's little fear of breaking things here, and if it does break, I think it's fixable. So So anyhow, that's going to be then for the servos. This I'll probably put some tissue or some tape on it or something to cover it up. It is getting dirty, which I'm not happy about, but it is what it is. Then once I have kind of the cables, the wires figured out, I'll put in the 5mm tube of carbon that I bought this morning. I don't know how to cut it, never worked with it. I suppose a saw something will do it. It's 50 centimeters approximately, so I think that will also give it more rigidity. So I have to dig in a hole which is 5mm. It's 5mm in diameter and 50 centimeters long. That actually will sit in there, and then at some point also glue it. And of course it's got to be very flush, so maybe even 6mm in, so that it can then also slide into the fuselage. So that is the wing. I think I already showed you the ailerons. Then in my chaotic way of thinking and progressing, I worked with the elevator, with the tailplane, and let's see how this goes or went. Now this is the original shape, I don't know if you can see it, and if you notice it isn't straight, so it's very difficult to put a moving elevator on something that isn't straight, because if I put hinges in the wrong way then it's just going to lock up, right? I was thinking it could just stay, but kind of for the sake of making sure and my lack of precision, I decided to cut off this little bit, which don't know what to do with it. I never like to throw things away, but I should probably. And then what I've been doing, I've been cutting out, and I haven't finished this yet, I've been cutting out the elevator that then will come in somehow like this. And then I've beveled this because this is where I'll put the hinges. I'll put probably some plastic hinges in this one, and then I'll also sand it down at the edge, maybe to make it a bit more streamlined. And I think this is going to be enough, and we'll see how I do also with the rod and things like that. But I think this is going to be enough. This is very chunky wood for me, this 1/4 inch, which is of course is different to work with. I'm used to the 1mm, 2mm, maybe 2.5mm mostly. But this working with this chunky wood is a bit different, but also not bad. By far not as chunky and as big as Cliff's Mercury, right? But I'm kind of liking it also. Really, balsa, you can't beat balsa, I'm going to say it from that side. And now what I'm going to do is actually leave this aside, because I need to do some editing so that I can publish. And tomorrow the weather might be good, so there's maybe an opportunity to go to flies. I know that I need to be much more tidy when I work, but when I have a project it gets untidy, and if I have 2 or 3 projects it gets even worse. So the progress is I've managed to cut the carbon rod, and I marked it on the wing and then cut out using the same method, like cutting out and then pulling out with the pliers. I've presented in the servos already. I haven't glued those in. I have glued in the carbon rod, but just to see how it would sit. And before I glue them in, actually I want to test them and center them. And in this way I hope that it can fit through. Actually I can do a test run through here into the wing. What I still have to figure out is how to get the cables for the servos in through that little hole, because it's not going to be so easy. So I have to figure out how I would maybe push it in as much as I can, try to thread in the cables, and then see how it goes. So anyhow, it's a bit of the challenge that I have to figure out. I was watching also other videos, because there's apparently a whole movement about converting these to RC. And I was quite messy because I was drawing directly on the wing. I've tried to rub it out a little bit so it's a bit cleaner, but still dirty. But I did see somebody using the good old trick of the masking tape, so I've already prepared the masking tape on the underside of the fuselage to putting also a carbon rod in there. I still have to figure out how to get the wing in there. Now the challenge with the fuselage, if I get the other rod, so here's the other rod, the other piece. It's actually the same rod but the other piece. If I were to put it in like this, I don't know if you can see, there's quite a big gap, right? So I need to either dig it in very deep on one side, and that would come into the battery compartment, would not be really good, or if I dig it very deep into the other side, it's going to come into the stabilizer. So I probably have to find a way of compromising. Another option would be to leave it on the outside. It would still give it some rigidity, like going a little bit in the front and a little bit in the back, and it would still stick outside, which might be not a bad option altogether. Or somehow try to dig it in at a level, at a degree that it's kind of okay. So I still have to think about it, how I'll do it, but there's not so much space either at the back or at the front, so I have to think about it. One idea that I was toying about with was to use the rod to put the push rod through to move the elevator, right? Because if not, the elevator servo would have to go somewhere here on the side, and the external cable. If I could use that same rod, that would be also an interesting solution. But then again, is where would I put in the servo? I would have to put the servo here up front. I'm now worried about being nose heavy, because the motor will still come here, all the electronics will be here. I was worried about being tail heavy, but now I might be worried about being nose heavy. So I'm not sure exactly how. I would rather have the servo somewhere close to where I think the center of gravity is, and then maybe indeed have an external connector to the elevator. It was just an idea. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it, but anyhow, those are the thoughts and the plans of converting this to RC. And before I glue this on, I have to put the undercarriage on, which is also important. And the question is, where has to be ahead of the center of gravity. Too far forward might not fit, too far back might nose over. These are the questions, so kind of guessing it, not calculating, guessing it. So, still working through my mess, the wing I just showed you, and I've been working now on the fuselage. I've done two key things on the fuselage. First of all, I wanted to put in the reinforcement, as I was mentioning, on the lower part and rear part of the fuselage. So I cut out a groove here, and my intention was to, when I did it actually, was to drive in the carbon tube. It's a 5mm diameter carbon tube from the back, and try to get it as far forward as I could. To do that, what I did, I sharpened on some sandpaper. I had the tube and I sharpened it, so I was turning it and I was trying to keep it as straight as possible. I almost made it, it just deviated a little bit, but it did deviate, but I think it did manage to strengthen it. And I don't know if you can see up to where I got, I don't know if I can point it, I got up to here. The intention was to get up to here, right? So I got up to here, then I tried to lift it somehow, and I discovered that carbon tubes or carbon fiber tubes are not unbreakable. I somehow had thought that they were really unbreakable, but they aren't. So it split, so the top part of it somehow split, or the bottom part of it split, so I had to leave it there, and I had to cut off the end. So I cut off, I don't know, like 10-13 centimeters short, basically this distance short, because I'd already measured it. So this distance short I had to cut off from the end. So not as good as I wanted, but not as bad as it could be also. So if I have it up to here, all this tail section, which is the narrow part, is now reinforced, and I hope that it's quite strongly reinforced. The only worry now is that the breaking point might be here, right behind the main wing. So I could potentially put in there also a bit of tube. I'm not sure if I'll do it or not, because my plan now is to put in the servo for the elevator. And as I already have this, and I had the idea of using this tube to put the push rod through, what I want to do now is to cut a hole here to put in the servo for the elevator, somehow embed it in here as much as I can, and then send the wire down through the tube that will come out through here, and then control the elevator. And I don't know if it's really needed, but I think in that way then it's going to be cleaner on the outside without so many push rods on the outside. I will still need a push rod for the rudder, that is true. And I'll also, for that, I always put it on the right. I know some people put it on the left. I use the right rudder mnemotechnic, so I'll have to put in a servo probably somewhere here to control the rudder from back here. So servo from here with a wire down here. I want to put things as close to the center of gravity as I think it is, because I'm not sure exactly how the weight is going to be distributed, which is also something that if I had calculated and thought of it before, I might be able to do better, but this is a learning experience. And then another thing that I've done, I think you can see it already, that's the receiver. I took the receiver from the Hurricane because I don't have another one. I have probably to order some more. I dug in as much as I dared into the lower fuselage to dig this in, to push this in as much as possible, and then using the same technique of using the carbon rod that was sharpened, I drilled a hole through, then I had to widen it a little bit, and I pushed the antennas out. So it's got these two little aerials sticking out, which I hope from the receiver is going to be fine. So the next challenge, or the next activity, is going to be the servos. So one at the bottom for the elevator, one on the right for the rudder, and then I'll probably then close it off there, because then the next step is going to be the whole electronics, which I'm always very much daunted by. But anyhow, some progress, quite a lot of work, I would say. Fun work, different material, foam, and the carbon rod is really different than balsa. I think I still prefer balsa, but yeah, why not? It's an interesting experiment. So let me do the holes for the servos, then come back, wrap it up, and then the next chapter will be the electronics. And the final update before wrapping up. So as you can see, I've dug in a hole and I've put in the servo that will control the elevator. I've got the home here because I think there's still some movement. I'm aiming to put it maybe on the third hole. I think I could still actually put it on the other hole, and it would still, the wire would still bend enough and go through the carbon rod that I have here. And then what I didn't think of is that they have cables, that servos do need a cable. So I repurposed the hole that I had for the antennae of the receiver, and I cut in a slit here to put in the cable through. I made the hole a little bit bigger, which is, well, it took me a bit of fight, and I managed to put the cable through there to connect it then into the cockpit where the electronics are. And I did the same for the servo that will control the rudder, which then this rod will go from here down up to here. I still have to cut the rudder out and see how I'm going to do that. I'll do that at a later stage. And the same, I use that same hole that I had prepared for the antennae to connect it into the cockpit. My worry here is now, will the antennae actually get in the way of all these controls? It's possible, so I might need to, maybe I might stick it. I'll see how I do that, but for the moment at least I've got it installed, both servos, and here is the receiver. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? You can't, not enough light. Anyhow, the receiver is in there, kind of in place, it won't go further back. And I've plugged already then the two servos, so that's kind of set up. One of the worries is that I'm going to have a lot of cables coming in through here, because there's also a hole here. Again, maybe you can, yeah, you can see it. Through that hole I intend to put in the cables of the aileron servos. So the cables are going to come in here. Then I have to connect it to a Y cable that I have here, and then plug it into the receiver also. So again, a lot of cabling going in and out through here. So this is going to be a spaghetti ball of servo cables, but it is what it is. And then here in the front it has space either for the ESC, which is a 40 amp. Don't know if you can see it, it's still in its bag. I still have to see how I connect it, and then also the battery, which is one of the small batteries that I have. I might fix something into the canopy. I'll see that. I have to then figure out on the next chapter. So that's it for the moment. I think quite a lot of work, different approach as I mentioned. Next steps is going to be to try to do the testing of all electronics. I've got here the motor also. I'll do the connections, test it up, make sure that things are moving as they should, and I haven't glued anything yet, so at least I know I'll be able to tell if things are moving in the right way or not, and then continue. So it'll be the rudder, to cut it out and probably make a cut here for the elevator to work, and also cut off the nose to install the motor. So that's going to be then the next step, the installation of the motor and the other electronics. As always, thank you very much everybody for watching and for following along, and I'll see you next time.